Hello.
Hello.
Hi, William. How are you?
Yeah,
Um,
Professor.
How's it
I'm
going,
sorry.
Dr. Alvin?
Very well, Jason. How about you?
Doing good. Another
Good.
week.
Yes, another week. Getting near finals. Are you prepared?
We'll see. I broke my collarbone this past week, so I might have to drop off if the surgeons give me a call. So
Well, sure. Yeah. How did you
mm,
do it, if you don't mind my asking?
just snowboarding. It was a bummer.
Say
So
no more. Just
yeah.
snowboard. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, yeah. And I gather you fell or hit something that wasn't also moving.
That's right. Yeah, I fell like straight to my shoulder. So it was a
Oh,
bummer. Yeah.
that
Yeah, but I'm
is.
making it out.
Yeah. I mean, those are the kind of injuries I think you typically expect to survive. I'm working the admitting people deal. Hello, Isabel.
Hello. I'm
How are
sorry I'm
you?
like spamming you, but I'm sorry to be spamming you because you're attached to all the emails.
Oh, did they go out? They all
I
went out
think
and stuff?
I think they did. I have like still a couple left to send out. But I will do that very shortly. But
All
I
right.
expect you to all of them, so I was like a little worried that you were being spammed.
Oh, that's okay. That's
Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, we finally got around to looking at your outlines of the term papers. And I all of them were good and interesting and met the standards of what we expect from a term paper. In some cases, Elizabeth and I thought a little more could be said. Uh, You know, one of the things that seemed to be we're saying to several of the proposals was that uh, they had been very broad and intended to cover many, many topics. And so personally, you're free to do that. But personally, I would prefer to have one or two or a small number of topics where you can really say something cream theoretically of importance, sort of get to the bottom of it or close to it, rather than, you know, just spread yourself too thin. But it's your option. Um, okay. So let's see what else is going on. Hi, Professor. Oh, yes, I have not been diligent in loading YouTube videos up to YouTube. Uh, I'll try to take care of that this week and get us at least up to date. In some cases, that may at least temporarily mean that I'm going to leave in breaks and things that I would normally cut out, but it'll be okay. All right. Did anybody think about any of the questions that are lingering in the class? Like, for example, um, one question that I'm left with from yesterday's discussion with Martino is it the case that we ever see entropy reversed locally uh, without seeing computation? Is computation required to reverse entropy? There's an argument, and by the way, that I argued that enzymes were little computers, essentially. And I mentioned a paper. The author is a MIDI, I think. You know, if any of you want to know more, you can track email me and I'll give you a reference. At any rate, yeah, and so I'm still interested in that question. Do we ever see entropy reverse locally uh, without some computational process taking place? No. Okay. At any rate, oh, Kamran Rizvi.
Yeah, hi, Professor. I'm sorry,
Hi.
I don't have an answer to your question, but I just had a side question related to the class, if that's okay. I might have
Yeah.
missed this, but I just wanted to know what's the deadline for submissions and uploading for like the assignment in terms of like the slides or like the paper. I might have missed it before in class, but I just wanted to confirm it.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, Isabel,
Yeah,
do we
I
do we
think we
know?
Yeah, I think we decided like last time during like class announcement. I'll just also make a broader course announcement. But I think it's decided to be the final period, the end of the final period for this course slot is what we announced to be.
Do you know
Oh,
what that
okay.
date is?
I think it's April 12th. I forget the time.
May
But I'll just
May
make an
12th,
announcement about that.
not April.
Oh, sorry, May 12th, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
I
perfect.
forget the time still, let me check on that, but I think it's May 12th.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thanks for asking the question, actually. Yeah. Um, Another thing, by the way, um, do any of you have a desire to present your stuff at a regular meeting? Okay. All right. It doesn't matter because I mean, to the extent that um, we can fill it with whatever it is we've been doing lately, the remaining, I guess, today and 4 more lectures. But if you have something you'd like to present, I might accommodate you. Okay, so yes, and so I am still struggling from my confusion. Shenghua, welcome back. And you missed a lot of confusion when the whole theory fell apart.
I like those moments. I'm sorry.
Sorry, what?
I love the moment when everything is confused.
Yes,
That's my state of mind most of the days anyway.
yes, it is sort of the life of a theoretician, a mathematician, a
Yes,
computer.
yes.
Yes, I do agree. And but sometimes when it falls apart, almost always when it falls apart in a big way, I'm kind of shocked and disturbed and anxious. But sometimes there's this hint that maybe this falling apart is a good thing and that you can rebuild it better. Um, I'm hoping that's what I'm in right now. So one of the things that I want to discuss is I want to go back and uh, talk about how I got confused and how I'm trying to repair it and etc. So the definition of what a preen is has become unconfused. It's what I said it was at the start. It's a unit of information that can be stored in physical things. Okay. Now, I got confused because you remember early on we had this discussion of consider all of the things that you would recognize as a bed. And I was saying that that was leading us to a definition of preen, a more mathematical one. I no longer believe that, but it is an interesting thing. So two things. One is I no longer think that's the road to the definition of a preen. but it is the road to what I think might be an interesting definition of something to explore. Number two, when we go back to that particular endeavor to talk about all the physical sets of physical objects was an effort to provide a mathematical foundation for preens and get rid of that informal definition. So I've also been working along those lines. And so one question I ask is, what is the definition of a basic unit of information? And oh yeah, if anybody has an idea, I'd like to hear what is a unit of information?
I mean, as syntactically, Shannon used to define bit as units, right?
Yes,
That's why in the entropy and all the theories eventually are measured by these bits, right?
I think it
Because then they
does.
said the entropy formula, everything somehow consistent to that. And I think like Hoffman code also enforce that, right? Namely that, the frequency of the measurement somehow is measured up to this binary
Yes.
representation in the minimal length if you want a certain degree of unambiguity, right?
Yeah. So there is, of course, Shannon's information theory, very important theory. And I would like to, at an appropriate time, come back to what you just said and try to see whether the definition of information that I now would give.
Drive some kind of equivalence or drive some kind of gap between those two notions. That could be very
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Or maybe there really isn't a gap, and it's a different view.
right.
But but in my hands, a unit of information, this may seem obvious to everybody, is a integer greater than or equal to 1. I mean, that may seem obvious to everybody that that's what a unit of information is. But it's just an integer, basically a natural number except for 0. And that those natural numbers, in a sense which I described so far, actually can be stored in physical objects and have copy numbers. And so we're not going to do that today, but that's where I'm sort of wandering around. Okay, but for today, I want to go back to that thing about sets of physical objects. And review what they might, quote, really be about. All right? So that's what we'll start with. Okay, so let's see. You're not going to get me today, William. Okay. So I've changed the topic of those physical things. And now
An application of preen theory in philosophy. Socrates' bed. In this chapter.
Okay, did we or didn't we go over Socrates' bed in earlier discussions?
We did.
Okay, thanks, John. We're going to go over it again because it's changed a little bit. All right, so here we go.
In this chapter we will apply preen theory to what philosophers call the problem of universals. The problem dates back at least to the time of Plato, when in Book X of the Republic, Plato, 1888, Socrates addresses the question, what is a bed? Socrates, let us take any common instance. There are beds and tables in the world, plenty of them, are there not? Glaucon, yes. Socrates, but there are only two ideas or forms of them, one the idea of a bed, the other of a table. Plato has made a distinction between the idea of a bed, which is not a physical thing, and beds, in the world, which are. In what is a preen? A similar distinction was made. A preen is a unit of information, a non-physical thing, that can be stored in physical things. Plato does not tell us precisely what ideas are, but regarding the idea of a bed, he writes, Socrates is made by God, as I think that we may say, for no one else can be the maker. And Socrates, two or more such ideal beds neither ever have been nor ever will be made by God. So, for Plato there is exactly one immutable bed idea. Here, preen theory takes a different view. In preen theory, there are many different bed ideas. To lessen the potential.
So back in, Plato, Socrates' time, ballpark, 2,000 years ago, Socrates is talking about this bed idea, which has come to be known as the sort of, in more modern language, the Platonic ideal of a bed. Yes, it's this non-physical thing, sort of a vision or of a bed that beds in the real world resemble enough that they get to be called beds in the real world. Socrates also goes on to talk about what about an artist who paints an image of a bed? Well, then he or she is not is one more step removed. That is, there's levels of reality. There's the ideal, which God knows. There's the actual physical beds, and then there's things like images of beds. All right, but that's not our problem. There's a distinction between real beds and non-real beds, or ideal beds.
To lessen the potential for notational confusion, I will henceforth use the word ideal, as in Platonic ideal, rather than idea. For example, I will speak of the bed ideal rather than the bed idea.
So, idea suggests that it's something in a brain, and therefore like a meme, but that's not what we want to happen. So I'm going to talk about bed ideals, these idealized beds.
Virtually all people have a personal bed meme that can be used by the person to recognize some set of physical things as beds, and, if the person has the necessary skills, to construct beds. Typically, different people have different bed memes. For example, my bed meme does not lead me to recognize hammocks as beds, but perhaps yours does.
Okay, so it's important in this discussion to pay attention to a maybe not so famous, but a statement made by Bishop Berkeley in like 1600s in England. Okay. And what he said, I might have mentioned this earlier, is everything is what it is and not some other thing, which I took as utterly brilliant. Okay. And if he had left out that other part, if he had just said everything is what it is, well, then we hear that a lot. But it was the addition and not some other thing that was so important to me. Okay, so in my experience, it's very often the case, especially with mathematical concepts, that we blur the lines between what a thing is and what it is not. And so, for example, what's the difference between a set of numbers and a sequence of numbers? Right?
This
John?
sequence, sorry, I didn't know if you were asking for an answer.
Oh, yeah, give me an answer.
The sequence has the notion of order, while the set does not.
Yeah, sequences are indexed usually by natural numbers. The first element, the second element, the third element, right? And it's would be so easy, especially if you were just beginning mathematics and just encountered these concepts, to say, well, they're both just a bunch of objects. But they're not, and they're different. And in my experience, it's very, very important to keep those distinctions as clear as possible in your head, because it's the foundation on which your ideas can build to insights. And if you don't have them firmly in place and correct, I think it limits how high your structures can go. They're the foundation. So, all right. So let's notice that I mentioned virtually all people have a personal bed meme. Okay, so what kind of object is a meme?
A unit of information.
Yes, it's a preen that happens to be stored in this person's brain, right? So if I give you a person and I ask what are all the preens stored in their brains, then we call that the person's meme set, recognizing Dawkins at the same time. So a bed meme is just some information in your head. Yeah, okay, so continuing.
Virtually all people have a personal bed meme that can be used by the person to recognize some set of physical things as beds, and, if the person has the necessary skills, to construct beds. Typically, different people have different bed memes. For example, my bed meme does not lead me to recognize hammocks as beds, but perhaps yours does. As an aside, how a person acquires their personal bed meme is of considerable interest. My informal view is that typically a person acquires.
Yeah, what's your view of how you've got a bed meme, right? Where did you get it? Were you born with it? Ryan?
I guess by encountering things in the real world that other people considered beds, and also by doing things that we do in beds, like sleeping, and then taking note of the things that we sleep on, then I guess those sort of lead you necessarily to an idea of what is a bed.
Okay. Now the first part of your answer is quite consistent with my view. That second part, I have more difficulty with. Uh, okay, Luke. Oh no, wait, never mind.
Uh,
Go.
I had one idea too, Dr. Adamant.
Yeah,
We're,
Jason.
like beyond just beds is like a noun, like people like will say like, oh, I'm going to bed, but they're like not necessarily referring to like I'm like physically going to bed, like they're gonna like brush their teeth and do like their nighttime routine. So like I feel like it kind of moves beyond like a single descriptor sometimes too, and that's what we associate mentally with beds too. So
Okay,
yeah.
I agree that there are things like that going on. I'm hoping that that particular angle of beds won't impact what I'm saying here, but I do agree it goes on for sure. All right, so um, here's what I've said it, and it's consistent with what Ryan has said, but okay.
As an aside, how a person acquires their personal bed meme is of considerable interest. My informal view is that typically a person acquires their bed meme when a presenter, for example a parent, presents the person with various examples of what the presenter recognizes as beds while uttering the word for bed in whatever language the presenter speaks.
Okay,
Then a process hardwired at birth.
so in the example I'm talking about, there's this presenter, it'd typically be your parents, uh, who are showing you or pointing at examples that their bed meme allows them, examples of physical objects called beds, and that at the same time they utter bed or in whatever language is their language, and that allows the child to um, okay, and that's the start of a process. And I'm just trying to be approximately right here.
Then a process hardwired at birth in humans allows us to extrapolate from a small number of such examples to provide our bed meme.
That is, when you've seen a bunch of beds, that it's something that happens in our brain that allows us to recognize other things as beds. All right.
Bed meme. This process appears to provide us with a very elaborate bed meme that allows us to recognize beds in a wide number of contexts, from various perspectives, from near or far, whether seen as a whole or just as a sufficiently large fragment. Developmental psychologists, neuroscientists, and others have studied these kinds of issues for a long time and are likely to have a deeper understanding of this.
Okay, so that's my informal view, roughly. Something like what I described happens, and that's how you get your bed memes. Now, that seemed consistent with what Ryan first said, but I'm not sure. You went on to say more, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess um, if you're never told that something is a bed, but you've been sleeping on this bed thing, whatever it is, without being told for a while, if you then later learn, okay, there's a word for that, it's called a bed, then you probably still associate the thing that you've been sleeping on for a while with that thing without ever being told that was a bed.
Yeah,
That's kind of like the light in the cave analogy, Ryan.
is it?
You're
Okay.
familiar with that?
I'm
You
familiar
know
with it,
that
but I don't see
diagram too?
the relation here. Oh,
Yeah,
enlighten me.
yeah,
Where like like the light in the cave where like they're like looking at shadows on the wall and like that's their reality and they can recognize those shadows. But once like they like climb out of like that reality and into another, then like it takes on different meanings, but they still are able to hold on to the old meanings of their shadows. That's like kind of how
I
I'm seeing it. Or
I
like
start to see that the shadows on the wall, also from uh, book 10 of the Republic, as I recall. Um, yeah, it may be related to this because uh, to some extent, Ryan's suggesting that you may see the shadows
mhm.
because you are in fact sleeping on this object, uh, and only acquire the name for it um, somehow when you're in a larger context. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Before that you take on your own meaning out of
yeah,
the entire experience.
yeah, I think there's something in what you say, but is it not the case that um, does somebody have to walk up to you in this practical example if you've been sleeping on this, you know, bunch of straw for a while, and does somebody have to come up and say, "Oh, that's a bed," or
I think
how
the
is it? Yeah,
in this case, if you've been sleeping on something for a while, then you could also acquire your bed meme or build your bed meme through someone telling you you sleep on a bed. So if you've been sleeping on it for a while, and then you combine that with we sleep on beds, then without ever being told this is what a bed looks like, you can combine the
yeah,
fact that you've been sleeping on it and people sleep in it with to associate them.
yeah. But I think it's starting to make sense to me, what you guys have said. So it seems to me that you could go through your whole life without ever naming the objects that you sleep on beds, right? You might been sleeping on this one thing, and then you're traveling to another town, and that thing looks similar to the thing I was sleeping on, and I'm tired. Boom, I'll sleep on it. And so you may acquire your own bed meme without ever being taught it, except by experience, and without ever assigning a name to it. Yeah, okay, I think you guys are right. I like that. All right, so William.
So I think that language is inherently ambiguous and it's just labels for things in the real world, right?
Yes, I do think of it that way.
Right. So
Yes,
if someone else calls a bed a fruit or something, they'll call it a fruit in their language.
yes, they will. And I think and I think what we've gotten to is that maybe there is no name that a person ever learns for this collection of things. That can be the case too. I also think there's a hint here in my description, which I now think may need work because of what you guys said. There's also this thing that maybe what happens, how we acquire bed means can have many forms, but one form it does seem to have is that you're presented with a bunch of examples of what your parents call would what your what are beds according to your parents' bed memes, and they have a word associated with it, and they pass that word along to you as well, and that this may be have something to do with language, where language comes from, and because they're going to use their own language to name the bed, right? And yeah, okay, a lot of good ideas. Ryan.
I guess something that's still a little confusing about the like sort of usage version of like the bed definition is this would mean that so if you just take a bed to be anything that you sleep on and that's how you sort of learned your bed meme, um, then that would necessarily lead you to like a more expansive definition of what it is a bed. So like in the text you mentioned that your bed meme does not include things like hammocks. So if you just grew up without a word for bed and just took it to be anything that you sleep on, then it would
Mhm.
like necessarily include things that we might not generally consider beds. I don't know what that means, but it's a notable difference.
Well, yeah, I think what you're suggesting is if you go this no naming way, that you just sleep it on things and you develop the ability to say, well, that looks a lot like that thing I slept on before, might as well sleep on it. Uh, and so it sounds like um, you might, for example, see a hammock and get in it, not even expecting it to be a thing you're sleeping. But once you get into it, you fall asleep and say, "Oh, I guess this is another place to sleep." That's the sort of thing you're suggesting, I think. And I do agree that can happen. In which case, what has happened to even though you don't call it this, bed meme? I think your bed meme has mutated because it's not the bed meme you had yesterday.
Yeah, Professor.
Yeah.
Sorry to
Oh,
interrupt.
wait a second, Jason. I think John had his hand
Oh
up
yeah,
first.
go ahead, John.
Oh, no, Jason, you can go ahead. I think if what you're saying is directly related, I think it would make more sense that you go first.
Okay.
Okay. I was just gonna say, it's funny, because I live in Seattle, and camping out here is pretty common. But I know a number of friends of mine who would like not even go near camping because like they would never consider, like a sleeping bag and a sleeping pad on the ground of bed. Even though for me it sounds like a pretty nice place to lie after a day. You know what I mean? But
Right.
yeah, it kind of comes with standards, I guess, too, at that point.
Yeah, no, I think what you're
Mm.
saying makes sense. It's much like the hammock deal. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, to them they might as well be like lying down in rocks or something, they'd like stay
yeah,
away from that. So yeah.
yeah. John.
Yeah, just a quick comment that I was wondering if, so what we're doing is an important exercise in terms of defining these concepts, but there's also a different thing that seems to be going on, which is some memes are acquired from our parents or our societies, um, and some we create ourselves, right? So Hamlet's soliloquy we create ourselves, right?
Yes.
But I don't know, a young child may learn how to pray or how to say a given prayer from their parents, if they are religious. Or so I think maybe it would be interesting to wonder, has the prayer meme somehow figured out a smart evolutionary trick to ensure that it gets passed on from the,
Oh,
you know?
yeah. Well, recalling that a meme is just a preen that happens to be stored in a brain, we really shouldn't talk about memes sort of generically. We should say, with respect to a physical object that stores it, that it's a meme, that physical object being a brain. Okay. So given a person, we can say that person's meme set is the set of preens stored in his brain. Or we can say of a computer, for example, that computer's preen set we call the elements of the preen stored in the computer we call um, terrains. Okay, so that's probably crisper language. Okay, now I totally agree. Being preens, they're all struggling to survive, which roughly means increased copy numbers. Uh, and some succeed and some don't. Yes. And but the ones that are of interest, um, where the struggle seems to be taking place and of which we can sort of see how it works, seem to be cultural preens because there they do have strategies to help them survive. Okay, so anyway, um, all right, that was interesting. It's also the case that whatever bed meme we develop seems to be very broad in the sense that you don't have to see the whole bed to think it's a bed. You don't have to, it can be in a hotel room or in your house, or it could be a bed in a furniture store. The context doesn't matter. You're not going to confuse the bed in the furniture store with the salesman in the furniture store, right? So anyway, yes, more parses. Okay.
Personal bed memes may change through time. I'll use the Wikipedia article bed, Wikipedia B, to illustrate this. Early beds were little more than piles of straw or some other natural material. So, apparently some early humans had bed memes. An important change was raising them off the ground, to avoid drafts, dirt, and pests. So, some later humans had bed memes that earlier humans did not. How did that happen? The genes, for their own survival, have designed people to be obligatory meme processors. We are constantly using our brains to process our existing memes and create new ones. See the
By the way, since the definition of preens is back to what it was before. Every piece of information that is stored in your brain is a preen. That is to say, yeah, okay. And therefore, everything stored in your brain is a meme, but that makes it a preen as well. It's your okay. So we can process our existing memes and create new ones. This is part of what you were talking about, John. Okay.
We are constantly using our brains to process our existing memes and create new ones. See the Hamlet's soliloquy preen struggle. Once memes concerning objects raised above ground level began to inhabit brains that already stored an old bed meme, perhaps some person created a new meme about beds raised above the ground, used it to build such a bed, perhaps something simple like placing straw on a table, slept on it, and found the experience pleasurable. Further meme processing led to a new bed meme that recognized raised beds as beds. The old bed meme had been supplanted by a new one in that person's brain. That person's bed meme had mutated. That person might present examples of beds, including raised ones, to their offspring and acquaintances. If the new bed ideal resulted in less disease, better protection from predators, or simply better sleep, then it might be selected and outcompete the old bed ideal for brains. At this point, it is easy to see how a sequence of such mutations would account for the bed meme that currently resides in your brain. So, your bed meme is the result of a sequence of mutations of earlier bed memes. Can we go back further in time? Did the bed meme in your brain start to emerge before humans existed? I suspect it did. Consider chimpanzees, though they are not our predecessors, the point will remain. They build beds. There is considerable evidence that they have bed ideals that are passed from chimp to chimp, and that these bed ideals mutate and evolve through time. Juvenile and adult apes devote considerable time and energy to the construction of a new sleeping platform or nest at the end of their daily active period. Current data suggests that infants and young juveniles, i.e., nursing young, acquire skills over years both through observation of their mother and practice. Chimpanzees are keen observers of physical properties of trees, including stiffness, strength, and leaf surface area, and they select species that provide the widest range of advantages, including predator avoidance, postural stability, thermoregulation, and pathogen avoidance. Sampson and Hunt, 2014.
Okay. Figure 19, bed memes, representations of physical objects recognized as beds. There's one, and there's one. Okay. But as Socrates forced me to point out, these are representations of physical objects that are recognized as beds. That is not a bed that Socrates is on in that picture. It's a picture of a bed. Anyway, continuing.
Well, if your bed meme can plausibly be traced back to pre-human times, how far back does it go? I suspect that the mutatory predecessors of your bed ideal emerged in the very distant past.
Right. So I think that's the case. I mean, I don't know how far back it goes. It could go all the way back to the emergence of life on Earth. Maybe it has to. Okay, but
Past.
we won't dwell on that.
Beds are not special. You also have a personal table meme, hammer meme, and a Hamlet's soliloquy meme. As with your bed meme, many of your memes were acquired through social interaction. For example, you are likely to acquire memes that allow you to recognize important people, such as media stars, elite politicians, sports heroes, and your own relatives and friends. Lecture-24, 20250416, Part 2.
So now we have this notion of an ideal from Socrates, and we have not said anything about ideals. We've talked about bed memes that people have, right, which are preens stored in their brains. Now I want to talk about what Socrates could have meant when he talks about the bed ideal.
In Socrates' bed, we considered your personal bed meme and remarked that it allows you to recognize some physical objects as beds. Let's consider the set of all physical objects that you would recognize as beds. Likely, you will be sleeping on one such physical object tonight. Also, the next time you stay in a hotel, there will probably be another physical object that you will recognize as a bed, even though you have never seen it before. There are even physical objects that have never existed and may never exist that you would recognize as beds, for example, one made with plutonium that glows, abrogating the need for a night light.
Do you happen to notice the mutation in this from the last time we were through? It used to say made with uranium-238. But I discovered uranium-238 does not glow. But plutonium does. So that's the change. Okay.
Light. Now consider the set of physical objects that could exist. That is, the set of physical objects whose existence would not violate any laws of physics. The set of physical objects that you would recognize as beds is a subset of the set of all physical objects that could exist. The set of all physical objects that do exist at this time would also be a subset of the set of physical objects that could exist. As an aside, what we mean by a physical object is not clear. Several researchers have given definitions, but the ones I have seen are useful in particular settings and not universal.
So I don't know exactly what we should assume a physical object is or isn't that could exist according to physics, but we're going to not resolve that issue. So we'll just say there's some notion of physical objects. Okay, so right. So there's all these physical objects that could exist. And then there's the physical objects that do exist, which are a subset of those right now at a particular time. And then there's the set of all physical objects that do exist and you would call a bed. That's another set. Okay. Or the set of physical objects that you would anyway, you get it. There's just sort of set theoretic stuff. All right, so.
Henceforth, we will call a subset of the set of physical objects that could exist an ideal. These ideals are our analog of Plato's ideals.
Okay, so I'm claiming that what Socrates was talking about is the bed ideal. We can take that for an individual and say whatever your bed meme tells you or leads you to recognize as physical objects that are beds, we're going to take the set of all such physical objects. And then we're going to say physical objects themselves are what we're going to call ideals. And the claim is that these sets of physical objects are the proper analog of what Socrates was saying. Okay, calling it the ideal bed. So Socrates has this vague idea of, a bed ideal, which is immutable, and there's exactly one of them, etc. And now we're substituting this other notion of an ideal is a set of physical objects. Okay, so rather than really talking about Plato's ideal, bed ideal, we're substituting for that the set of physical objects that meet that ideal or come close enough to it that we're going to call them beds. But that notion of ideal seems to be dependent on the person and goes back to our bed memes, which allow us to make those decisions. Okay, so now here we get to this Bishop Berkeley thing. So what kind of mathematical or object is an ideal?
A set
Yes, a set of whats.
of physical objects.
That's right. Therefore, we've now defined this notion of an ideal, and in particular, we're going to talk about your personal bed ideal. Yes. You also have a personal bed meme. Are those the same thing? They couldn't possibly be, because what kind of object is a bed meme?
A series?
An,
No.
an integer, right?
Yes, in my further contemplations, but at least using it's a unit of information that can be stored in a physical thing. And so your bed meme is a preen. It's a unit of information that can be stored in a physical and your particular bed meme is one of the is a unit of information that happens to be stored in your brain. Okay. So, so that's what your bed meme is. Yet our ideals are sets of physical objects. They're different kinds of objects. This is to some extent related to the thing you brought up, Martino, of, dimensions. Uh, if you write something equals something else, the dimensions have to work out, right? It has to be mass times velocity squared on both sides or whatever it is. Yes. Okay, so it's not the case that your bed ideal is the same as your bed mean. Okay, so just to get that clear, what is the relationship of the two to one another? Ryan?
I guess I would see the bed meme as more of like an indicator function that indicates membership in the ideal.
Yes, that's exactly what I see. It's basically, yes, even though it's a unit of information, as computer scientists, we know that units of information aren't just dead objects. For example, the programs you run on your computer are units of information, stored program computer, but they do things. And similarly, your bed meme is a kind of program that resides in your head. And what it allows you to do is sort of look at the world and point to things and take your sensory inputs, for example, and say whether there's a bed in that picture. Yes, Martino.
My question for you is, have you ever heard of Jung's archetypes?
I've heard that term, but I've never explored it.
It seems to be
Mm.
pretty analogous with how you're describing ideals.
Yes.
So it would be curious to look into. And then also I have a question. Uh,
Mhm.
so for me, I see and agree with what you're saying that a meme and an individual person's subjective meme is a piece of information. You can call it an integer in our analogy. But that integer is just one index in a series of integers or previous and future integers that represent the meme of that particular idea or object in this case. So,
Okay.
for example, we can make the case of beds, right? You said that beds, the meme for bed has evolved from a pile of straw to a raised surface to something with a mattress on top of it and sheets. And so over time and generations, the meme has been mutated, and
Right.
therefore the meme can be represented as a series in which each index represents a new mutational event. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, it's a preen and or a set of preens and it evolves through time. Yes.
and okay, so um, do you think that the set can diverge at any point? Say, um, at our current moment in time, you and I have the same idea of what a bed is. But
Yes.
I travel to a foreign country in which the idea of a bed is very different.
Yes.
And then my idea of a bed is changed radically to the point where it no longer resembles your meme for a bed.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, in that case, um what's happening? So are you saying that the ideal or our collective ideal is expanding to accommodate a new image of a bed?
No, I mean, possibly, but let me say what I think. Yes, that you have some information stored in your brain that we're calling your bread meme, your bed meme. And it's not sort of just static, it does things. And among the things it does is it allows you to wander the world and take your sensory inputs and point to something and say, oh, that's a bed. Okay. And sort of the collection of all things that you would in fact point to and say, oh, that's a bed. We're saying that is now your bed ideal, that set of objects, right? So yes, it's the result of your bed meme that determines what objects are in that set. Yes? Okay. Now, yes, if you go to another country and you discover a new bed, or there's many ways to do this, uh, your bed meme has changed or may change. Yes. And and once your bed meme changes, it has its own bed ideal. Probably, or one would expect that if you changed your bed meme, probably the set of physical objects you recognize as beds is likely to have changed as well. But it's possible you changed your bed meme and it doesn't really affect the set of physical objects that you would recognize as beds. I mean, maybe you had a typo in your bed meme information, and then you know, put a punctuation mark or something. And well, you haven't really changed it, so it doesn't change the recognition of beds that each of them do. So, but roughly speaking, yes, the the meme can change in your head. And typically, once that changes, we'd expect the corresponding ideal to change as well, be the typical thing that happens. Yes?
By this definition, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems that ideals belong to the individual, not to the society.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, I'm sorry, I cut you off, Marco.
No, no, I was just clarifying this because in my head, originally I had interpreted um, that the ideal is the entire set of objects that at least somebody in the society would recognize
No,
as a bed.
no,
But instead, it
that's
seems
not
to
what I
be
intend.
also a subjective concept.
Yes. So,
Okay.
for example, when Socrates and Glaucon are talking about their bed ideal, they're acting as if there's just one, this pristine, ephemeral, ideal bed. But in fact, using this, we would say it's quite unlikely that that the bed memes stored by Glaucon and Socrates were the same, but and it's very unlikely, in addition, that the bed meme in Socrates' bed had the associated bed ideal. That was the same as the bed meme in Glaucon's brain bed ideal. They're probably just different sets of physical objects. Nonetheless, they probably had a lot of commonalities. You know, probably everybody would agree this, that, or the other was a bed. It's just when we get to hammocks or, you know, that maybe disagreements start, or sleeping bags. Okay, so yeah, does that clear up a little?
That clarified
Okay.
a lot. Thank you.
Oh, great. Okay. So yes, so that's what's being said here. Okay. So let's.
So, the set of physical objects that you would recognize.
Oh, John, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Oh, no worries. It's a quick question. So I'm not sure this is important, but it's not clear to me that if the meme is sort of the indicator function idea, that there is a correspondence between memes and the and ideals, because it's not clear to me what the cardinality of the set of ideals is. Whereas when we say that preens are integers, then we know that it's only countably. But I'm not sure this is important. I mean, like,
No, but you've raised a good question. When I said correspondence, I wasn't using it in the sort of mathematical sense that it's sometimes used to mean a one-to-one onto function. Okay, I just meant there's a relationship between the two. Okay, so would I be better off avoiding the word correspondence in the future to avoid this issue? I don't know. You know, informally, I think people would say. Okay. Anyway, I just meant there was a relationship. Yes. All right.
makes sense.
So, huh?
No, it makes sense. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
So,
So,
the set of physical objects that you would recognize as beds is now, by definition, an ideal. Notice that, like Plato's ideals, our ideals are immutable.
right, because an object, like Plato's notion of an ideal, this perfect bed, for example, uh, is immutable. He basically says that in the Republic. It's also true of our ideals. Yes. Indeed, your bed meme may evolve, so you have a different bed meme, and that may lead you to have a different bed ideal associated with that bed meme. But the old bed meme you had was just a set of physical objects. And it hasn't changed. It's still, that set of physical objects is still a set of physical objects, and therefore is still an ideal. It's just you've sort of supplanted that one for your purposes with a different set of physical objects. So the definition of ideal, a set of physical objects, does not change, right? That set of physical objects that could exist does not change through time. Okay. However, and this is part of what led me down the road to total confusion for a while.
Notice that like Plato's ideals, our ideals are immutable, they are merely sets of physical objects that could exist. Despite this, your bed ideal may change through time.
Okay, and we understand how, if you change your bed meme, that may mean your bed ideal changes as well. So that's fine. But there's a second way that a bed ideal can change through time, even though it's immutable. Just to keep you guys mixed up, and me too, for a very long time. I hope I'm not.
Given an ideal and a time t, we can define that ideal's copy set at time t to be the ideal intersected with the set of physical objects that do exist at time t. The cardinality of the copy set at time t is the copy number of the ideal at time t.
Okay, this is what led me off the rails earlier. Okay, so let's take your ideal of a bed, which you acquire via your bed meme. What kind of mathematical object is it?
A set,
Of
physical objects.
yes. Okay, now that's what it is. But then we know the number if physical objects changes, the universe changes. Yes. So we could take your definition, your bed ideal, this set of physical objects, and at any particular time intersect it with the objects that actually exist. And we'll call that at time t, we'll call that the copy set at time t. Hang on a second here. At time t of your ideal. Okay, you follow? Okay, so and that set has a cardinality. And we'll call the cardinality of the copy set of your ideal at time t the copy number of your ideal at time t. So you haven't changed your ideal, but the copy number of the ideal has changed. Huh? Okay. And it's because the copy numbers were changing, it sounded to me like it was sort of like preens, and I got confused. So these ideals, which are just sets of physical objects, now have copy numbers. Do you buy that? I mean, you're following enough of these twists and turns to see that? Okay. So, Ryan?
Wouldn't it be more like, I guess, consistent or sensible to define the copy number of the ideal as sort of like the number of like living things that share your ideal?
No, 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 no. Then that would be the copy number of your bed meme.
I see. Okay.
Okay. So that,
Right.
yeah, that's
Okay.
all correct. But those are information things. Now we got this thing, your bed ideal, which also has a copy number. I mean, there it's defined, right? And as I say, it's at that point that, I thought that therefore beds were preens because their copy numbers were changing. Okay. So this brings us to sort of the fundamental question that I'd like you guys to answer. But we'll take the 10-minute break now till 3:30, and then you guys can reveal the truth to me. So are these ideals evolving, trying to keep their copy numbers up? Are they another level of evolution? I don't know what. And is it related, for example, to this question of whether the universe evolves? I don't know any of that, but that's where we're sort of at. Okay, so see you at 3:20. Hello. All right. So, yes. Um, so there's a lot of questions here, for me at least anyway. So these sets of physical objects are not preens. I mean, just by definition, they can't be. Okay. I mean, they're different types of animals. All right. Now, but we see that these sets of physical objects that could exist, uh, what we call ideals now, uh, have copy numbers at each particular time. So the question, one of the questions is, uh, are beds struggling to survive in increasing their copy numbers? I mean, is evolution taking place on these things? You know, pretty clear that what we meant when we talked about preens evolving and trying to increase their copy numbers, uh, struggling to. Uh, but now we got beds. So, Ryan, what's going on?
So I have, I guess, a related comment. I'm not entirely sure about ideals specifically, but since they're related to memes, I do think memes within one person or one organism are undergoing a form of evolution because they're struggling to outcompete the other memes under a scarcity of resource, namely the brain storage. So
Yes, they are.
because of that, if we can say something about memes evolving, maybe that says something about the ideals evolving. I'm a little more fuzzy on whether the ideals themselves are evolving.
Right, right. So, um, uh, I agree with everything you said, but I'm trying to fit these pieces together in some reasonable way, which is what you were trying to do as well. Um, and I don't know how to do it, but let me make an argument that maybe that uh, uh, the ideal that you have of a bed, right? Your bed ideal, um, that it's actually struggling. Not we're going to keep your bed meme fixed and just look at the bed ideal that it um, engenders. Um, and we're going to, and we see that its copy number could increase. Now, consider the following scenario. Uh, let's say that you are also a bed manufacturer. For example, you might be the bed manufacturer who first came up with the idea of a water bed. Are they still around? Or you know what they are anyway? Okay. You came up with a water bed. So, uh, no, oh, okay. No, let's not make it a water bed. Let's make it, you came up with a new bed that is uses a certain kind of material for the fabric that you have a patent on this material. And may, no matter what you think, you can manufacture these new beds and sell them if you can. And but they the new beds that would be manufactured would be already fit as physical objects you would recognize as beds. So they're already part of your bed ideal. It's just that now somebody's actually bringing some into existence. Okay. So that person advertises on television and blah, blah, blah. And he shows you these new particular beds and he tells you how great they are. And you say, well, yes, they're certainly beds, but these are really nice beds or something. And I'm going to pay $1,000 to get one of those beds. So maybe you do buy the bed. And then the copy number of that particular bed has gone up. And so the number of copies of your bed ideal has gone up. So has that particular type of bed struggled to increase its copy number? And there's another aspect to this, which is the physics possibility, which is to say, let's say you are successful in selling a lot of these beds. Then what you've apparently done is used resources available in the universe, free energy or stuff, to organize other stuff into this kind of bed. And so you've impacted sort of the direction of the evolution of the universe, for example, as where you're going to find energy, where blah, blah, blah. All right. Can anybody make any sense out of all this? John, help me out.
I can't make sense of it. I'm sorry, but I can offer different questions. So, one thing I thought about a few weeks back in the semester, because I didn't like the whole subset of all the things that could exist idea for preens. Because so I thought about waves in the ocean, and if the physical manifestation of a wave on the beach, say, if that counted as a copy number, because it's sort of, in the case of waves, right, it will oscillate meaninglessly, right, up and down time. Meaninglessly in terms of its evolutionary, I mean, I guess our intuition of what we mean by evolution, right? And the wave doesn't seem to evolve in any meaningful way in the sense that it won't change its shape. So its physical embodiment in this wave at the beach object doesn't seem as meaningful as preens, as the information we have in our brains. So it's the wave, they do belong in the ideals camp.
Well, okay, go on, please.
And then another distinction, which I think is very important, is that ideals are immutable. They're just sets of things that could exist. So you can list them. Let's say you can list them, right?
We won't worry about the cardinality issue.
Right. Yeah. Let's say you can know if they're a set or not. So when I say that my bad ideal is one of these sets, that's just me recognizing, me labeling that ideal as my bad ideal.
Exactly. That is what it is.
And then when we say that my bad ideal changed, it's not that the ideal, the set changed, because these sets are immutable. It's just
Yes.
I am picking a new set from the list to call it my bad ideal.
I agree with that in general too.
So my bad ideal is kind of like this ref I have in my head. And when I say ref, it's just a pointer, right? It's a box that points to one of the ideal sets.
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh.
So I don't have any conclusions. That's just that's I think an important distinction, because when we call like when we say like the bad ideal, it seems like we're talking about this set, and then that can change, but it only changed to me. It didn't change at all. Like it's just me
Yeah,
really.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You know, like you say, it's just what set of physical objects you essentially can recognize may change over time. Yeah, what you said, I get. Um, yeah, so, but I still like this question of let's take one set of physical objects and we'll call them the bed ideal for this discussion. Okay, so we won't care if it's yours or whatever, we just select it one. And okay, now that bed ideal seems to have a copy number. And right now, it has a copy number. And is that bed ideal struggling to increase its own copy number, presumably at the expense of other ideals around, because some materials need it to increase the copy number and they have to come from someplace, but the universe evolves. And so that kind of thing is happening all the time, right? So as the universe evolves, if we look at the set of all ideals out there, we're going to see that their copy numbers are shifting all around. Just because the universe keeps changing the physical objects that are out actually exist. So so since those changes are happening, are there let's take an ideal. Can we search for an ideal which we see somehow keeps increasing copy number, right? And has it found a good way to do that? I don't, you know, it seems to be successful. So, is there such a thing? Nathan.
I don't know if this is kind of like cheating, but given like any preen, let's say the smallpox preen, since that is a physical or information stored in physical objects, you could say an ideal is the set of all objects that could exist that store the smallpox preen. And then that set is
Wait, start
trying to
again.
increase its copy number
I
via
might have missed.
smallpox.
I'm sorry. Please say it again. I missed something there. Go ahead.
Sorry if I cut out. But so a preen is a piece of information stored in physical objects. So
Yeah.
let's say the smallpox preen. If you let an ideal be like the set of all objects that store the smallpox preen.
Okay, so hold on. When you say store the smallpox preen, I'm assuming we're talking about the smallpox genome or something. Is that what
Yeah, yes.
Okay, okay, go on. Yeah.
So I guess that set would be an ideal, if I understand correctly. And one
Yes.
could say via smallpox's struggle to survive, that ideal struggles to increase its copy
I
number.
see. I see.
Maybe.
Okay. So you are right that if we're talking about the smallpox genome, uh, to me, we're talking about a preen. And we usually think of it as stored in molecules of DNA, but it can be written out on a computer as well. Okay. Um, and maybe other places too. So yes, and so that preen has a copy number, which we've described. Um, now, if we look at the associated ideal of that preen, so it's a good point. We don't have to stick to memes. All preens have, in some sense, well, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but this one does, seem to have an associated ideal. So you're going to collect up all of the physical objects in the world that are storing the smallpox genome. Okay. Now, right, that would include presumably, at least at one time, a whole bunch of viruses, or at least their DNA in viruses, but a whole bunch. And their biology tells us, yeah, those things are struggling to exist and increase their copy numbers. They break into cells in order to do it, right? They're increasing the copy numbers of the preen, the smallpox genome preen, but they are also increasing the copies, the physical objects where that preen is stored, right? And they seem to be, I think you're on to something here. So did you get further in this? Do you know what?
I mean, I don't know. I feel this is uh like I could see this for ideals that correspond to preens, but unless if you somehow could consider a beta preen, I wasn't sure on how to generalize this.
Can I can I
Yeah, John.
can I build on that? Because
Yeah,
that's really neat.
yeah,
So I think what Nathan is saying is that preens are also ideals, or they can be used to define ideals if we associate being stored in physical objects as a property that they have, right? So
yes.
they are, so every preen has a corresponding ideal, which is namely the set of physical objects that could store that preen.
Yeah,
The question is if is the reverse is true, right? If every ideal corresponds to a preen as well. And maybe we can search
yeah,
for a
that's a good way of asking a question. And yeah, is that the case? If I give you my favorite set of physical objects, is there always a preen they store? To some extent, the answer is yes, and I can make that a yes,
how
but I don't.
I can
Huh?
get two unrelated physical objects and that's a subset of, I mean, I can get like a water bottle and a
No.
little, and
The,
that's
the, the, okay. Let me give what may be not relevant. And again, we're, as usual, stuck in the woods here. We're totally lost and confused. But I mean, you guys are making good spotting paths for us. So let me say this. Uh, given an ideal, let's take your bed ideal. Well, to some extent, when we're dealing with bed ideals, one can think that every object in that ideal has a label bed ideal on it, right? And so the beds are storing some information. They're the ones with the label on them. Yeah. Okay. Now, more generally, let's say I take an arbitrary ideal, which humans never thought about. Is it storing information? Well, to some extent it is. It's storing the information that these things are in the ideal and all the rest of the physical objects out there aren't. Yeah. And that's like one bit of information to some extent. Yes. So every object in the preen has a little label saying, I'm in this preen. Or excuse me, not in the preen. I'm in the ideal. Now that's, you know, we're in danger here of just chasing our tails in circles, right? But uh, but since we only got like a few more minutes, let's keep chasing, hoping it leads us someplace. Okay, Ryan, please.
So what do we do about um, cases where, so at least I guess this is largely responding to John's point that like every preen would have an associated ideal, which would be the set of physical objects that could store that preen. What do you do about the case where maybe that set is ambiguous, or it depends on your sort of opinion, for lack of a better term? So, for example, I guess in Catholicism, I think the Pope must be male, but like that expectation that the Pope must be a male is subjective. I mean, it's part of Catholicism, but like, can we say that a female could store the Pope preen set? It
I
depends on who
see.
you ask.
Uh, if there is a Pope Preem set, which, you know, let's assume there is, uh, I don't see any reason that I know of why a woman couldn't store it or a computer couldn't store it, right?
Right, but if you say that to a Catholic, then necessarily they can't store it because it's just not allowed, right?
Well, no, I don't know. I mean, to some extent that's true because I suspect that uh, once you become a cardinal, say, you learn some things, you acquire some memes that cultural memes that are not known to anybody else, and you may be sworn to secrecy,
I th
you know, that you
I th
don't reveal them. So there can be barriers, but yes, go on.
I think there's more than just the information though. Like I have a feeling to a Catholic, even if those secrets were revealed, like regardless, even if you just like copied all of the information from, say, Pope Francis's brain into the brain of a woman, I think
Yeah.
to a Catholic, that woman could not become a pope. It's not a function of the information. There's something about being a woman that makes you ineligible to be a pope, I think,
Sure. I mean, eh,
to a
okay, so
Catholic
like,
or a Christian.
yeah, so it seems to me I can transfer all the information about how a bird flies, uh, download it from birds' brains or something, and store it in a computer or store it in my own brain, at least in principle. Uh, does that mean I would know how to fly? Uh, would it, allow me to fly? No. So is that related to what
I suppose so. I mean, it seems a little bit less subjective to me that, like, clearly you can't fly, but I guess still technically whether or not you could fly is still a little bit subjective because maybe we have different definitions of being able to fly. So I think it's very comparable.
Okay. But for the same reason, I think you could download the information. So for example, if we download the other way, then a woman can have a baby. Let's try to avoid political controversy here. Just okay. So a woman could have a baby, and presumably all the information and preens involved in that, in the woman, could be transferred to a man, but no baby, right? So your Pope thing, yeah, I don't see why we couldn't, do a Vulcan mind meld, with the Pope, and any of us could acquire all of the preens and stuff. But it doesn't mean we can become Pope. In the case of the flying, because we just don't have the objects necessary. In the case of the Pope, we're
We've been declared
just not
ineligible,
allowed.
right?
Huh?
We've been declared ineligible by society.
That's right. Yeah. And we may know that we know everything about the Pope, but we also know that we're ineligible. And just deciding that you're going to be the Pope is not the same as being a Pope. Okay. All right. So, John, give you the last word on this.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm not sure I agree with your previous comment that to every ideal there must be a preen. I mean, you said to every ideal, an ideal is a set with physical objects inside. And in a sense, they have an information on them, which is, I am a member of this ideal, right? Each object has
Yeah.
information. But it's not the object that is storing this information. It's your brain that's saying that the object is a member of the set. It's not the object itself.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can do that sequence of arguments.
Yes. Yes, I understand, John. If I can allow myself to, and I can. All right. Well, you have the last word. I'll just leave it at that. So, all right, guys, as usual, thank you very much. It's been very enlightening and a lot of good ideas. And I'll see you next Monday, I guess. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.